I hope you all are doing well. It's been a pleasure to record these entertainment audios for you, as I wanted you to tag along the beginning of Su-Lia's journey. YingShua has a very long story that for 14 years he couldn't speak of to anyone, but little did Su-Lia know that his story was about them. Chapter 2. Unwillingness. Please, don't shoot them, I cried out in the middle of my sleep, and my eyes burst open into the morning light. While gasping for air, a sequence of throbbing pain weighed over my mind, imprisoning my will to break the illusion I was suffering in. I clutched hard at my bedsheet. Strands of black hair stuck to the skin of my neck. Hot sweat rode down my chest. Another one of those nightmares. The morning had come too quickly. Golden sunlight glowed against my eyelids. I was having an extremely hard time getting out of bed. My whole body was sore. Does it hurt? The gentle sound of YingShua's medium-low voice whispered in my thoughts, followed by the ambient sound of machine guns roaring through my ears. Voices of crying women and children played over and over in my head. I felt awful. It does hurt now, my heart answered. Surprisingly, I had woken up in my own bed. It was a reoccurring dream, one in which I kept going back to the same place and time. I was sometimes running away, but on most occasions, I'd be fighting for my life. It was rare for me to sleep peacefully. This morning was different. Rather than wishing my dreams to be over because I hated remembering them, I felt an unwillingness to wake up. The nightmare running in fear ended with so many unanswered questions that my heart felt lost and left behind. I got out of bed, reminding myself that it was just a bad dream. While in the bathroom showering, a loud knocking came banging at my dorm door. Su-Lia, Su-Lia, are you awake yet? That high-pitched voice, who else would it be? Su-Lia, it's 10 to 9. That just gives us 10 minutes before art history. I could picture her ears and cheek being pushed against my door, trying to listen if I was still sleeping. Coming, I shouted from the bathroom and quickly ran out to dress myself. A soft pink blouse with light blue fitted jeans felt simple enough. I tossed my hair in a high ponytail and fixed my bangs before grabbing my book bag and slipping on my starlight kickers. I ran for the door and swung it open. Standing in front of me was my not-so-impressed best friend, Ginny Kong. Ginny and I were childhood friends. We had grown up together in Asheville, North Carolina, and currently attend college in Hickory. She had short black hair that stopped at her jawline and light bangs that laid weightlessly over her black eyes. No matter what mood she was in, I could never get enough of how gorgeously her eyes twinkled from behind her extra-long lashes and against her smooth, pale skin. It's only been a week of sophomore year, and you're gonna make us late, she said, rolling her eyes. I'm sorry, you really didn't have to come get me, Ginny, I grinned, and added in a joking tone. One of those nightmares again. Oh, what did you dream about last night? She asked, suddenly interested. Not much, I lied. Maybe it wasn't a nightmare after all. You wouldn't be able to imagine him anyways, even if I told you, I teased. Quickly, I scooted Ginny out and shut the door behind us. What? That's not fair. You can't be having all the fun, Ginny whined and continued to tail behind me, laughing. She knew the jokes of my crazy dreams. After all, I was a big wanderer, whether in reality or in spirit. Life of always swimming in oceans of dreams was a challenge. At times, I even second-guessed myself if they were real or not. While I was medically diagnosed to have a bad case of sleepwalking, shamans declared me as being gifted with a wandering soul, or Hmong, plinya. Wandering souls are understood to consistently travel through multidimensional places when their body is resting. When the soul returns to the body, it produces premonition dreams, a vision of potential events that may or may not interpret the reality of the future or past. My gleeful expression slowly faded as my thoughts continued in a daze. Deep down, I was more disappointed than happy. It was hard to put up a what I call normal front just so my friends would worry less of me. Shortly afterwards, at the start of art history, 2 hands dropped on my shoulders and spun me around. Big, green, feathery eyes expressing concern stared into mine. You've been very out of it today, Su-Lia. Is everything okay with you? Kathy Meyer asked. She was one of my close American classmates who loved the Hmong culture. Her red, bouncy hair spiraled off her shoulders in contrast with her yellow blouse. I blinked and offered Kathy a beaming smile. Yes, I'm fine. I just didn't get enough sleep last night. No sleep with the wonderful man in her bed, interrupted Ginny as she dropped her book on top of her desk, startling Kathy. A dream, I corrected, with eyes rolling to the ceiling. Kathy held her breath in amazement. Oh, a man. I could see both girls exchanging weird expressions, like they were both telepathically scheming on how to get more out of me. I grabbed both Kathy's hands and gave her a smirk, pushing her hands off my shoulders. There was no real man. I'll never get to meet him anyways. Kathy moved away with a frown and tucked the back of her hands beneath her chin. Wish I could dream like you and see so many things. Maybe I'll be able to meet the man of my dreams. Trust me, it's not pretty, I told Kathy in a serious tone. It's more like torture, if you ask me. Before long, a loud knocking came from the classroom door. Miss Jones, our art history professor, walked in gracefully. All 24 students sat down quickly, and class went on for a good hour. Are you joining us for lunch later, Su-Lia? Kathy asked after class ended and flopped her backpack over one of her shoulders. No, I'll catch up with you girls later. I've got a few research papers to finish up. My girlfriends looked at each other confused. They were used to me always suggesting lunch first. I love food, but this just wasn't the day. Well, since you don't look well, go do what you need to do and get some rest, Kathy insisted before we parted ways. I watched as the sight of Ginny and Kathy disappeared into the distance. Chapter 3, Remembrance. I came to Charlotte Academy of Arts and Design on a full scholarship. I knew the way to make it was to learn to be independent, utilize my wisdom, and be earnest in faith and in purpose. Growing up, I never met my father, and my mother was only 18 when I was born. She lived through being criticized by the community because she didn't have a husband, education, and a worthy title to her career. None of that mattered to me, nor was I ever embarrassed by it. Regardless of the challenges, my mother always ensured I wasn't left alone in the dark or ever went hungry. She was the light of my life. The words of my mother resounded. You are the best version of me, Su-Lia. Life is just like art. Opportunities are the sky. The creations of it are vast, and your imagination will never run empty. You will always be seeking for answers for as long as your heart is full. She was right, and was never too quick to judge anyone. My mother was different. Whether I had real-life goals or spiritual goals, she believed them all. My phone rang and knocked me out of my deep trance. I picked it up to the sound of my mother's cheery voice. My daughter, I will be coming in town to see you this weekend. Will you be available? Mother traveled for a living, selling life insurance. She often stopped in Hickory since it was only an hour's drive away. My eyes grew wet. I couldn't wait to see her. Yes, Mom, I'll be here. We spoke for a few minutes, and just as I was about to slip my phone back into my pocket, a portrait at the far end of the hall to the right caught my eyes. This was the first time I noticed the artwork hung along the walls. It seemed that the school had finished remodeling the area. From a distance, the portrait had warm colors of yellow, orange, and red, contrast with different shades of green. I narrowed my eyes and calmly gazed as my feet began to walk towards it. The nearer I got, the more mesmerizing it became. It was a portrait of a massive field of deep red poppy flowers cascading beneath a beautiful bright green mountain. The setting looked to be during the summer, while the wheat was crisp and golden in color. Rays of sunlight shimmered through threads of poppy stems. If my eyes weren't playing tricks on me, it almost felt like the portrait came to life. I could already fancy how graceful the flowers motioned in the whispers of the wind. Whoever captured this moment in the portrait was an amazing photographer. Every detail of the picture had a meaning. The flowers as a symbol of remembrance, the sun rays as hopes for freedom, and the mountains as a promise of where home will always be. Before stepping away, another part of the wall portrait caught my eyes, and I had to take a second look. The heart of the entire portrait was found along the upper reaches of the mountain, a cozy home made from bamboo thatched in golden brown. Flowers decked the front of the house, and a lengthy stair trailed up to the mountain to it. I could only imagine how breathtaking it would be to be able to wake up to such exhilarating scenery every morning. A moment later, I heard YingShua's voice again. "Because you were there." I snapped out of my thoughts as my eyes searched around me. Someone had walked past with a wisp of air, but it was no one I recognized. Gathering myself together, I managed to get one more glance before stepping away to carry on with my day. The library was just around the corner. Entering, the old gentleman librarian waved and greeted me with a gleeful smile. "How do you do, Su-Lia?" "I'm doing well, sir." I walked past, exchanging greetings with Mr. Benz, who was the general librarian of the college. He wore thick, heavy glasses over ice blue eyes, but tended to still squint every time he spoke. His hair was thinned out platinum gray over wrinkly ivory skin. Mr. Benz wore a blue and black striped collared shirt that tucked neatly in his navy pants with light brown dress shoes. The very back of the library was one of my most favorite spots to sit, study, or maybe even nap when I felt like being isolated from the normal afternoon crowd. Next to me were 4 tall, wide windows that reached to the ceiling. 3 stories down, I glanced at cars strolling along in their daily traffic routines, accompanied by a handful of pearlescent painted aeromobiles flying at building level, a relatively recent invention, and still few in number given their expense. It was still attractive to see them in the air from time to time. My research paper was finally finished. After spending a few hours in the library, I threw my hands in the air and stretched, which made my shoulders feel good. The digital clock on the library wall changed to 3:40 p.m., and I heard my stomach growling. Having skipped out on lunch with the girls, my next stop was likely to be the school cafeteria. That would be 10:65. The system voice prompt. I tapped my phone against the checkout register to pay for my grilled chicken salad sandwich and a bottle of water. Thankfully, I had made it just in time before they closed and decided to go out for some fresh air before the next class, visual arts. I took a stroll outside the front of the campus while finishing my food. The air smelled so fresh now that all vehicles ran on electric motor rather than gas. Further out, I spotted the newest transportation line, the SkyTrain, meandering across the sunset sky. Who would have thought that today's society would become so much more efficient and advanced compared to many decades ago, where walking remained the main source of transportation? The world had changed a lot since then. The time and place I always dreamt about resided in the past, clearly without any kind of social media, mobile devices, or entertainment platform. It was incomparable. How tough life was for those I often dreamt about, having to survive during war and poverty. Happiness wasn't even a choice during horrific times. Stopping, not knowing how I ended up here, I stared up at a white building with tall pitch-black windows soaring over me. Sports virtual simulation. Just what I needed. Nightmares are so draining, and they were starting to take a toll on my physical body. The exercise would pump me up and get my mind away from the reality of the world, especially bad dreams that messed with my head. The system voice greeted me. "Su-Lia, a pleasure to serve you again. Please enter your weight and height." The menu projected from the kiosk as I entered. Weight, 110 pounds. Height, 5'4". Birthday, 4/17/2058. Archery is my most favorite hobby, which I played with my girlfriends often, a virtual simulation game offered near the college campus. A step back into the dark room, I turned on my sapphire blue eye shield. "Have a pleasant session, Miss Chang," the system voice rang, and suddenly the room glowed red. Dark silhouettes of rotating human figures with targets glowing from their chests all came at me from multiple directions. Stage 1, rotation. Activate light mode. I commanded my star kickers, and sequential air compression dispersed from beneath my sneakers. I drew my bow with an arrow back, eyes darting from one target to the other, and shot multiple blazing arrows that streaked neon blue through the virtual scenery. My sneakers made it easy to maneuver when the gameplay transitioned to higher elevations, allowing me to dash up flights of stairs, climb hills, and slide through tight areas, while I hunted for targets, pillars, raised and descended as I raced through, keeping my eyes on every target that popped out. Stage 2, Tunnel Trap. Skidding to a halt, orange neon spiral lights emerged from yards away as the giant rings of light came closer. Maneuvering targets transformed into virtual human figures of different sizes that looked like zombies. I summoned more arrows to hand and leaped back as I shot 6 more arrows at the growling monsters, executing them as they withered away into the air, followed by shrills. Session concluded. The system prompt as I took off my eye shield and jumped off the 4-feet pillar, landing with grace. The doors split to my left and a burst of air conditioning cooled me down. I was feeling better already. Target execution, 24/25. I smirked at seeing my score flash from the wall in red. My flexibility and skills were still great, despite the years I had not put them to use. Visual arts was not until evening, so I decided to head back to my dorm to shower and work the rest of my paintings. The academy was quite generous. Every student had a private space that came with an equipped kitchen, small living room, and a bathroom. My study area had one gray linen couch that converts into a nice fluffy rose pink bed. Sheer lavender curtains billowed out to my balcony where I was sitting to finish up touches of my landscape pieces. A while later, I stretched while walking back inside, feeling exhausted from staying busy all day. Hot chocolate tasted good on a chilly day, and a nap was calling for me before class as usual. The impact of hitting ice-cold water burned through my skin. I struggled to push myself up, but the current was so strong, my efforts only served to pull me deeper. At which point, I could feel liquid welling up in my lungs and my throat tighten. Seconds later, I heard a loud splash, as though someone had jumped in after me. Underwater was dim. I couldn't see anything except a faint figure, which looked like a man coming toward me, perhaps with the intention of rescuing me. He had a very familiar presence, but I wasn't able to make out his face just yet. Before I could think any further on this, he grabbed me and pulled me over to him. One of his arms ringed around my rib cage, and the other forcefully swam us up to surface. I couldn't seize anywhere else, so I clung around his neck for support. We fell together onto the lakeshore ground. His back hit the wet, mushy sand as I landed on top of him, and we both panted for air. My fingers clutched at his bare chest while his hands gripped around my shoulders to hold me in place. The taste of muddy water was horrible. My insides rumbled, and I tossed my head aside to gag out the remaining dreads before wiping my mouth with the back of my hand. I turned around, hair a drippy mess, while my shadow hovered over an extremely familiar pair of chestnut eyes. "YingShua?" I asked in a quiet gasp, still catching my breath. He stared intently with worried eyes, like he was searching for an answer. "Su-Lia, where did you go? And why did you do that?" he questioned sternly, gaining control of his breathing. "Do what?" "I took a nap?" Confusion hit me as my eyes scanned the area. The question didn't quite register. I had just closed my eyes, and here I was, lost again with a pounding headache. I saw his chest raise as he held his breath before making a statement. "You were trying to drown yourself." Drown myself? Why would I do that? Although I remembered struggling in the water, I didn't know how I ended up in this nasty lake. Right, I must be dreaming again. I shook my head. No, that was not me trying to drown myself. I must have fallen from up there. I pointed upwards, but at nothing in particular, feeling a bit silly telling the truth, or at least I imagined that was what happened. One of his eyebrows raised, like he didn't believe me. He propped both his elbows into the gritty sand beneath him. "You climbed this tree and fell." I looked up, and there was actually a tree overhanging the spot in the lake where he had pulled me out. Obviously, I wasn't doing a good job convincing him, so I tried again. Look, I didn't want to be here in the first place, but I don't know how to explain to you how I ended up here again. This place, what happened to us, even you, are all just things in my dreams. Before long, you will disappear, I told him, raising my chin. You mean you will disappear like yesterday? YingShua replied, eyes fixed on me like he was waiting for confirmation. Yesterday? Then I thought hard. Oh, right, you never came back. I did. After finding out a soldier was lurking around the area, I had to put him to sleep, he explained. You killed him? He attacked with his knife first, but I caught it and knocked him out before he pulled out his rifle. I came back to check on you, but you disappeared. My eyes enlarged and I hurriedly asked searchingly, Are you hurt anywhere? He shook his head. Momentarily, YingShua's eyes dropped down to my body. He cast his eyes quickly to the side like he had seen the wrong thing. Then it clicked. I was soaking, which made my pink blouse transparent, revealing my bra and cleavage beneath. To add to my embarrassment, I was sitting casually on top of the man and had been talking to him the entire time while he was enclosed between my legs. YingShua swallowed hard while staring away with a flushed face. He seemed to be holding his breath. I jumped off immediately and turned around to cover myself. I didn't mean to do that. You shouldn't dress so thinly, he commented before getting up from the ground. YingShua brushed off the sand from his back and pants like nothing happened. He then approached with bare feet until he aligned his shoulders with mine. If you think this is a dream, then continue to stay inside this reality if you know what's good for you. It's a dangerous time to be wandering off, he cautioned. The words caught at my chest. I was speechless. He sounded adamant. Although he spoke in rough tones, I could sense he was only worried. YingShua walked over to collect his bag from the shore while I stole glances at him. He looked decent, even in just a pair of black trousers secured by a red sash belt. The fabric stuck to his long legs. Water drops from locks of his wet hair coursed down his neck towards the valleys between his back muscles. YingShua slipped on his black top and returned to me. Keeping his eyes to the ground, he withdrew an outfit from the backpack. This man seemed to have everything in that bag, as though his life depended on it. This isn't much, but it's my mother's. She has a petite frame like you. He held a small bundle of clothes in front of me. I could see they were sewn nicely in black, red, and green. Are you sure I can wear this? Yes. YingShua slowly turned his back and waited patiently while I changed out of my damp clothes. I slipped on the simple Hmong vintage top and pleated skirt first. Then I tied the dress apron on, before looping the dull red sash belt twice around my middle and fastened it at the back. At least that was how I remembered to dress myself in traditional Hmong attire. The fabric smelled and felt just as fresh and crisp too. The details and pattern of the gorgeous handmade embroidery trailed along the plum and red skirt of fine stitches shaped like stars, roses, and vines. My sneakers were still wet, but I put them back on anyways. YingShua turned to face me, and I could see his face lit with astonishment. It's quite short, YingShua said after examining the fitting and blushing when seeing the top didn't cover my slender belly. I like it, actually. Spreading the dress on both sides, I twirled once and came to a stop as the skirt swayed to the side and returned, touching my thighs. I held my breath, hoping YingShua would say something to me, but he only remained gazing with soft eyes. You said this was your mother's outfit. I asked him to break the silence. My mother passed away before I could give it to her as a gift. She was usually poorly dressed, so I worked hard to afford new clothes for her, he replied in a sad, hesitant tone. My heart hurt when I noticed the quiver in his eyes. Even he had a long story he couldn't tell anyone. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ask about something so personal. Without thinking twice, my hands reached gently upwards and brought him down, wrapping my arms around his wide shoulders. Shocked at my physical response, YingShua froze stiffly, like he wasn't sure if he was permitted to return the same gesture. While his heart thumped faster, his hands twitched at his side, curling into loose fists. The wind whispered by crackling trees, while the glittering lake motioned serenely, and birds chirped in the sky. The timeless moment felt like infinity wasn't long enough. I felt YingShua's arms slowly rise, and before long, they wrapped tightly around my back and to my waist. He pressed my lean body against his as he dug his face into my hair, like he longed for a moment to hold on to someone. Seemingly, he had a story he wanted to tell, but for such a long time, there was no one to listen to him.